to the younger generations, a lot of that wealth is held up in small business. It's a lot easier to take something that already exists and build it than to build something from scratch. It refers to the trillions of dollars that the baby boomer generation has that is going to be passed down to their heirs. And a lot of that money, some of it's obviously in real estate, some of it is in stocks and bonds, some's probably in cash. A good portion of it is in the form of small businesses.
Welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Curtis A. Merriweather Jr. Hey, you guys already know. You guys have been on this channel for any length of time. You know, the purpose of this channel is to educate entrepreneurs. And the way we educate entrepreneurs is through education, consultation, and training support services. The goal of this channel is to lower your learning curve and to help you get profitable faster. Now, many of you guys know, in 2023, I went through the process of completing my Ph.D. in management from Case Western Reserve University. So we want to bring some advanced educational material here, share some practical tools, tips, strategies, and insights, and just make sure we're doing everything possible to arm you with the information you need to find success on your government contracting journey. Now on the screen, you're going to see my URL. That is, please note that the URL has changed. If you've been watching this channel for any length of time, the URL has changed. You'll also have the link on our teaching platform up, 8figuregovcon.com. Definitely give us a look. You can go directly to our course store library as well. I'm sure you'll find some information that will be very helpful. We have a great, I do mean a great conversation lined up for you today. Before I jump into my topic, I want you to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way, anytime I produce new content, you'll be notified most promptly. Now, before we bring our guests to the stage, I just want to remind you that we're doing the Launchpad Formula Bootcamp. It will start in August. The information you will see in the upper corner of your screen. You'll see that flyer. Definitely tap in. It's going to be a completely transformative experience. You do not want to miss it. Okay, now that we have all of that out of the way, we have a great guest for you guys today. There's a gentleman that I had the opportunity of meeting a couple of years ago, and he's doing some amazing things, and I wanted to share, just who he is to our audience and some of the things that he's doing. And so I think this is going to be a transformative conversation for many of you. And we want to make sure that we give him some love on our channel. So I want to, without further ado, I want to just kind of introduce our guest today. Our guest is Reid Tileston. Reid Tileston is an author, keynote speaker, and an expert in entrepreneurial business ownership, something very near and dear to my heart. He currently serves as the adjunct professor at Case Western Reserve University. With the release of his new book, Grit It Done, Reid shares his insights from his over 15 years of a successful on-the-ground entrepreneurial business ownership that has led him to acquire, grow, and ultimately sell 4 different companies with successful exits. His most recent acquisition resulted in a 10x return multiple of invested capital. As a leading voice in the space, Reid has worked with leading brands such as Harley-Davidson, the Milwaukee Bucks, John Deere, and in addition, he's been featured on the Wall Street Journal and Crain's Chicago. He's an Eagle Scout, an Ironman triathlete. Reid rejuvenates in the outdoors and is a perpetual state of planning for his next life adventure, which recently entailed racing up the world's tallest staircase in Switzerland. That's pretty amazing. Reid is on a mission to empower the entrepreneurial business owners and waiting to experience the elation that awaits when you grit it done. I want to welcome my friend and my guest, Reid Tileston, to the stage. Good to see you, Reid.
Dr. Merriweather, the pleasure is absolutely mine. So thank you so much for having me on today. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I think it's going to be very powerful. I mean, I think the things you've done, we're both entrepreneurs and we kind of came at it from two different perspectives. But I just want the audience to be aware there's multiple ways of approaching this thing that we call entrepreneurship. So before we kind of just jump into some of my first line of questioning, who is Reid Tileston?
Reid Tileston at my core is I'm just the child of two hippie endurance athletes. My parents met in the 70s at the starting line of a running race in Northern California. My dad, Fred, he's 6'2", and his first cousin, Terry, who's 6'5", and they're dressed in their 1970s running attire. They were literally, Curtis, lubing themselves up with Vaseline to avoid chafing, like inner armpits, nipples, inner thighs. Then my future mother walked up and was like, "Hey guys, it's can I borrow some of your Vaseline?" And that's how my parents met. So if you want to understand Reid as a person, you got to go back to how my parents met back in the day.
Oh man, that's amazing. Reid, when we met, I remember we were at Weatherhead, which is where we both did some doctoral work at, and I know you're still there. And I remember meeting you, and you start talking to me about this thing called entrepreneurship through acquisition. And I knew about things like private equity, venture capital, but that was a new term for me at that time. Now, of course, just like when you see a new car and you buy a new vehicle, and as soon as you buy the new vehicle, you see the vehicle everywhere. That's what this entrepreneurship through acquisition conversation was for me. So it was new for me. So for those that are listening, what is entrepreneurship through acquisition, or also known as ETA? What does that mean? What is ETA?
It is a lower risk form of entrepreneurship. It's basically the idea that as opposed to starting something from scratch, you can buy something existing that already works and build upon it. And let me tell you how I first actually got involved in this. I'm from the Bay Area originally, and I grew up about 15 minutes from San Francisco Airport. So in the days before Uber and Lyft existed, my older brother started to give my parents and my parents' friends rides to the airport, and they would pay him a little bit of money, right? And he actually expanded this to maybe where he had like 7 or 8 clients, and he was making, good money giving these rides to the airport. Then he went to college, and I got my driver's license. So I took this airport courier business that he had essentially built from the ground up, and I took it and I just expanded it from, 8 clients to probably 30, 35, maybe 40 by the time I left for college. My friends' parents, my parents, their parents' friends, people from church, from sports teams, the community. And I made really good money doing this. And what that taught me, Curtis, is that it's a lot easier to take something that already exists and build it than to build something from scratch. And private equity has been doing this for years. But what's so unique about entrepreneurship through acquisition is that with the silver tsunami and the trillions of dollars that are being passed from the baby boomers who are retiring to the younger generations, a lot of that wealth is held up in small business. So we just live at a time where it's really opportune to buy existing businesses as the silver tsunami hits. So that's how ETA came about for me personally, and that's why you're hearing a lot about it in the ecosystems right now.
Now, you used a term that I believe I know what you mean. The listeners may not. When you say the silver tsunami, what is that referring to?
It refers to the trillions of dollars that the baby boomer generation has that is going to be passed down to their heirs. And a lot of that money, some of it's obviously in real estate, some of it is in stocks and bonds, some's probably in cash. A good portion of it is in the form of small businesses. A lot of these individuals are small business owners, and these small business owners have to figure out what they're going to do with the business. They could sell it to private equity. They could sell it to a strategic. They could also decide they want to shut it down. They could give it to a kid, or they could sell it to an ETA practitioner, someone like me, someone like you, someone like the students that I teach that want to go out and own a business. Because Curtis, the American dream to me is alive and well. You look at what and I talk about this stuff in the book. You can get it at grititdone.com. It's a great first step in this process. Who do you think is the most popular institution in the US, as evidenced by Gallup surveys Americans every summer? And they ask them, what institution do you have the most faith in? What's your guess of what institution that is? It could be Congress, it could be the president, it could be the military, it could be big corporations. What do you guess? Well, it's a group overall. It's small business owners. Americans have the most faith in small business owners over any institution. And it has been that way consistently for the last 20 years. Military is number 2. Congress is the lowest. Congress is 8%, religion's 32%, small businesses are 64% currently. So it's a great life because, there's 4 avatars. Avatar 1 is you can be an employee. Employees are great. They're the backbone of companies. They're the backbone of the economy. The good ones get promoted and the bad ones, tend to find the door. Second avatar is you have what I'll call an equity employee, and that's a CEO. A CEO is someone that works on the business, not necessarily in the business. So they're creating equity value, but ultimately, Curtis, they don't control their destiny because the company is controlled by a board. So a CEO, they can get fired. Then you have the third avatar, that's a business owner. I've spent a lot of time as my life as a business owner. But oftentimes as a business owner, you have the freedom and the autonomy of owning the business and you own your upside, which is awesome. But ultimately, you work in the business, not on the business. So the business ultimately owns you. Last avatar, which I talk about in the book, is what I'll call an entrepreneurial business owner. And that is where you own your upside like a business owner does, but because you're working on the business and not in the business actually works for you. And that's why I wrote this book, was to create a roadmap for individuals that are looking at acquiring their first business or individuals that currently own a business that want to get to that entrepreneurial business owner avatar. And all this stuff is detailed in the book. You can get it at grititdone.com.
No, that's amazing. The 4 avatars. Let me ask you a question. When you went down this ETA journey, where did you start before you got to number 4?
I started at San Francisco's oldest pub, a place called the Old Ship Saloon. I was working in finance, and I was out with my older brother and someone else he worked with that worked in lower middle market private equity. And they were looking at deal sourcing in the franchise space, looking at this concept called Anytime Fitness. At this point in my life, I was making good money in finance, had $100,000 in the bank, and I go through this story and more of the details in the book, grititdone.com. You can buy it there. And I was trying to figure out what the next step in my life was going to be. Did I want to stay in finance? No, because ultimately, I'm not a spreadsheet jockey. I don't really like deal sourcing. I wanted to operate something. They were looking at this fitness concept that had these very successful franchise locations that were just coming into California. So we all agreed that I was going to quit my job. We all put equity into it, and I went out, and that's how I started my path in the small business ownership realm. The first club, it was December 2007. A couple things happened. One, we chose to ignore the advice of the franchise about location. That was the biggest issue. Second, the Great Recession hit in the California Central Valley, so economic times were not good. And third, I had no idea how to run a business. But ultimately, I learned through that experience what I'd done wrong. And through some strokes of luck, which I could talk through if you want to spend the time, I was able to go out on my own and open up a number of Anytime Fitness clubs in the Central Valley. And as I opened more of those clubs, to answer your question, that's how I learned how to hire people, how to put the systems in place, a lot of which the franchise had, some of which I built on my own, to really become an absentee owner, to become an entrepreneurial business owner, where I was able to live the American dream. I was sitting back, making good money, improving communities, helping people get fit, and empowering my team members to run the business for me.
Oh, that's amazing. What are some of those things that you employed to improve? So you found yourself in this very tumultuous time with the economy, a lot of moving pieces and parts were happening. What things did you do to kind of keep the business afloat in the midst of all that chaos?
Well, the one thing I did is I became a superhero. Captain Running Man is the mascot of Anytime Fitness. And, in the summer of 2008, when the club was not cash flow positive, so we're bleeding working capital, I literally rented a superhero suit from the franchisor and I went around Sacramento in the 100-degree heat. And this superhero suit had a muscle suit, so it was very hot. Knocked on doors, went to the grocery store, passed out flyers, sold these short-term summertime memberships. But eventually I flipped into automatic renewal monthly dues. And that's how I got the club to be break even. So it was just hard work, grit, determination. What I learned though, Curtis, in that moment is that I was a 1/3 equity owner of the club. My brother and the partner also owned a third. And I love those guys, although our relationship at that time was not too great as this club was struggling. And during those hot summers in Sacramento in 2008, was that 16 years ago now? I realized, you know what? If I'm going to be the guy in the purple superhero suit, pounding the pavement, sweating my you know what's off, I want to own all the upside in the business. And that's where I had that revelation that, you know what, I'm not an equity employee. I want to be a business owner. And I have been from that point going forward. And I'm not going to sit here and say that being an equity employee is the wrong path or the right path. I think it's just critical that people have that assessment. And I created a tool which you can find in the book. You can find it at grititdone.com, which helps people realize where on that spectrum they lie. Because what I see a lot in this space from the teaching standpoint and the mentoring standpoint is that I don't think that people always give enough thought to what their avatar is before they get involved in this process. And I see people spend a lot of time and a lot of money without really thinking through and doing that self-assessment. So the best starting points for this are: one, buy the book, read it. It'll take you 3 hours. Then do the assessment, figure out if you do want to do this, which of those avatars you want to take on. And then that's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of heartache and a lot of money as you work towards what your end goal is. So as Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind.
No, I love it. I love it. You talked about some, oftentimes when we're on social media and someone is pushing a new thing. For me, it's government contracting. For you, it's ETA. You hear all of the pie in the sky ideology around it. But you gave a very telling example of the challenge that comes. So we know there's challenge in this. You learn how to navigate through it. So what is some of the greatest rewards you think you've seen in this journey as well?
Relationships. Simple as that. It's the relationships. For me, everything that I've ever accomplished in life is because I was inspired by somebody to do it. And all of the most fulfilling experiences I've had in life are from people I have met in that journey. I'll give you an example. We both are, delving in the academic world. When I was at Chicago Booth for my MBA, Booth launched their first course on entrepreneurship through acquisition. This was after I had already owned fitness clubs. So I'm a small business guy already. So I got the opportunity to be the teaching assistant for this course. And it was a 40-hour-a-week endeavor, building the curriculum from the ground up with these two first-time adjuncts. None of us knew what we were doing. I had such a fulfilling experience with them. And I've gone back and I've lectured in that class and I've watched it grow. I've watched it change lives. I've watched it be transformative for people. So that experience of being the TA and my relationship with those two professors and the others involved in the class, that's what the fuel is for me to go out and teach this now as an adjunct to other people that want to go down this path. It's because I was inspired by other people. And in the businesses that I've owned, and I have some cool stories that I go through in the book that give more examples of this, but I was at a coffee shop in a town where I opened a fitness center, when out of nowhere, and I'm working on my surface, out of nowhere, this crazy lady grabs my bicep and she was like, "Are you the guy that's opening the fitness center in town?" And I said, yeah, that's me. A little bit caught off guard by the fact that someone has like gripped my bicep out of nowhere. And that lady went on to be the manager of that fitness club until I sold it 2 years ago. So she worked for 12 years for me. We are very good friends to this day. And what we've gone through over those 12 years, for me at least, has been life-changing. And that's just one example of a couple that I've had over the years doing this. In the book, I refer to them as equity employees. They have certainly made me a lot of money over the years. That's only the second most important part. It's the relationships that I have with them that still exist to this day. So to me, this is all about the relationships.
Okay, no, I get it. Relationships are key. I agree. I say the same thing on this channel all the time about the value of just key relationships. So if someone's looking at this program and they read the book, what type of skill sets do you think are inherent to success? So I got the book. I'm gonna probably, I may jump in one of Reid's classes on ETA. What kind of skill sets does a person who's going to be successful in this need to bring to the table? That question.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's a great one. Two things. One, if you're not all in, you're in the way. If you're going down this path of small business ownership to be an ETA practitioner or an entrepreneurial business owner, if you're halfway in, you're halfway out. Make sure you're dedicated to it. There's a lot of great literature in this space. There's a lot of great master classes, online classes, peer groups, whole 9 yards. The critical thing is that in the book, I outline frameworks for how to be successful with this, but I also couple it with the personal anecdotes of what it's actually like to be a business owner. You heard the purple superhero suit. There's a lot of others. My intention is I want people to really, in a sense, get turned off by doing this so that if they do actually make the choice to do it, they can be all in. Because being a business owner is an all-in endeavor. Now, you can follow the steps that I outline to become an entrepreneurial business owner and to be an absentee owner. You can get there eventually, and a lot of people do. I think that it is very challenging, and it's a misnomer to think that you can get there without putting in the work required to really understand the business, put the people in the right places, put the operations in, have the processes. And that takes a lot to do. And I work with a lot of people, some of which I know from peer groups I'm in, some of which I just know from the space, that what they tell me is, I had this vision where I could buy this business and just, work like 5 or 10 hours a week in it and it would all be good. There's probably been a couple cases where that's worked for people, but it is the exception and not the rule. So if you're not all in, you are in the way. That's the first thing. Second thing, and this is outlined in the book in great detail. I go through the cool stories of how peer groups have helped me over the years. Peer groups empower. Find the right peer group for you. It could be, you can go get an MBA and you can join an ETA club, and that could be your peer group, right? You could join an online one. You could, decide you want to take a class that I teach, decide you want to work with someone like me. There's no right peer group. There's no wrong peer group. Find the right peer group. Find the one that resonates with you, that brings out your ideal self, which you appreciate that term from our time at Case Western. Find that right one and diligence the peer groups like you would diligence a business you're going to buy, like you would diligence someone like you were going to know your significant other. Be very thorough with that, because those peer groups are going to be an instrumental factor in your success in buying a business and also in your success after. Is it possible to do it alone? Yes, people do it alone. Why? I have no idea. And there's very compelling studies that show that those that find the right peer groups achieve much higher levels of success.
No. Thank you so much for clarifying. Another question. What's the difference between private equity and ETA?
The difference between private equity and ETA, and it's nuanced. There's two kinds of entrepreneurship through acquisition, two forms of ETA. There's one where you take the role of an equity employee, where you're a CEO, and there's the one where you take the role of being a business owner. So if you think about ETA as being a business owner, the difference is that you own the company, right? You control the company. You control your destiny as an operator. If you think about ETA as being an equity employee, you can think about ETA as being a micro private equity, right? It's just looking at companies that are traditionally smaller than private equity. And also the operator typically has less experience than a private equity CEO would have. So as an example, Curtis, if I'm a private equity fund and I'm like, hey, I want to go buy a company that does defense contracting and does a lot of work with the government, I'm going to say, Curtis, I want you to come in here and be the CEO. We found the company. Here's what we're going to pay you. Here's who's going to be on the board. You're going to be the CEO, right? Whereas with ETA, the CEOs can typically have less experience. It could be that, you know what, you got no background whatsoever. We're going to buy a smaller company. We're going to take more of a hands-on approach and kind of give you some kid gloves in the process. So ETA is a great way for people that don't have that experience to become business CEOs or business owners. That's how you can differentiate it between private equity and ETA.
No, I love it. What I love about this concept, Reid, is this is a way to jumpstart your entrepreneurial journey. You know, starting companies from the ground up, as we know, is hard. We've both done it. But this is a way to take a process or take a business that already has some process and really just force multiply the effort. So I think this is an amazing concept.
And a lot of it is just from the energy and the dedication of the individual that does it. Let's go back to my high school years. Take the taxi service to the airport, right? Processes were there, the concept was there, just took it, and it had momentum, right? It had momentum, which was key. Just took it, added some more gusto, put the pedal to the metal, and it experienced robust growth. So if you want to think about, a simple way to think about entrepreneurship through acquisition, I think that is the best example to do it.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. I want to be very, very mindful of your time. And so here's the question. As we get ready to sign off here, how do people get in contact with you? How do they get the book? How do they now start putting some action steps behind this thing we've talked about now for almost 30 minutes, this entrepreneurship through acquisition? What's the next steps?
Well, 30 minutes, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
Next steps is go to grititdone.com. You can buy the book there and then follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. So many people over the years that I've been doing this, if I needed to do a phone call just to ask them questions about their experience, they always said yes. So I will always do a 30-minute phone call with anybody. It might take me a bit to get it on my schedule, but read the book, follow me on LinkedIn, ping me if you want to chat about this stuff. And I'm super excited for anyone that considers doing this opportunity, whether they decide to actually do it or go back to what they were doing before. I think this is a great thing that everyone should consider at some point in their career.
No, I think so. This is I didn't know about this when I started my business almost 16 years ago. I didn't know this even existed. And so to stumble across you and to learn about this concept has really changed how I think about some things. I just want to make sure our audience knows how to tap into some stuff. There's a different type of business owners. Some business owners are great at starting businesses. I think I'm that guy. And there's other entrepreneurs who are great at coming into something that already exists and expanding upon it. And I think we just got to understand which one we are and tap into the skill set to best maximize value. All righty. Well, Reid, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. This has been a very productive conversation. Definitely go check Reid's book out, Grit It Done. It's available where books are sold, but it's definitely available on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. Reid is a great person, great instructor. I have not had the opportunity of taking his course yet, but I've heard rave reviews about it, and I know that it's going to help transform people who take the opportunity seriously. It's going to transform business trajectories and financial trajectories. So I'm definitely going to encourage you guys to. Thanks, Reid.
And we just have a ton of fun in the class too. So that's what it's all about. We like to smile a lot. What's so fun if you can't enjoy the journey?
That's it, man. We got to do things that we love, things that's going to bring us value. That's what the name of the game is. Well, guys, that's all that we have for this particular episode. I want you to go back and watch this video over again. Reid dropped a lot of insightful tips, strategies, insights. If you have not heard about entrepreneurship through acquisition, also the acronym ETA, you definitely want to go check it out. Definitely pick up Reid Tileston's book on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. And I want to see you in a future video. So before I sign off, I want you to go back and watch some of my previous videos, and I'll see you in the comments. Until next time.